Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
And we're back. Welcome back. This is Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. Dennis Rimmer here. And with us today from the Regina area, singer, songwriter, musician, Jeffery Straker. Sir, thanks for being with us on this momentous occasion.
Thanks for having me, Dennis.
Okay. Jeffrey's a singer, songwriter, pianist, like I said. So, Jeffery, where did you grow up and what got you started playing the piano?
Well, I grew up in a on a grain farm near a small town in Saskatchewan. So the little town is called Punashai, for any of your listeners who would know that. And, my mom was a piano player growing up, and my dad played a five-string banjo. And Mom was really wanted all of us kids, myself and my siblings, to try piano. So she put us in lessons all when we were kind of in around grade 3 in school. I think we were sort of 7 years old when we all started. And my brother and sister didn't really take to it, but I really liked it off the hop, and I really wanted to practice, and I really wanted to impress my teacher is what I really wanted to do. Her name was Mrs. Young, and we were so lucky in a small farming town in Saskatchewan to have this incredibly talented musician, singer-musician, as well as a gifted teacher, because she enabled music in the life of so many people. So that's kind of where it all started.
Which was all of my next question. So we'll hang up now. No. So you started playing when you were about 6, 7, 8, like you said. So early musical influences was just your parents, or do you have a wider range than that?
Well, it kind of runs a little bit of a gamut, because my influences are a little all over the map. So the early stuff, you're kind of hearing coming out of the speakers of the radio and the record player in your parents' house, really at your youngest years, and that was typically country, old country stuff like Hank Snow, Hank Williams, and then Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers, not that old but still country, the Oak Ridge Boys, that type of stuff. But I was also studying classical piano, so I started to really like the melodies and the progressions and the music and the classical piano stuff I was listening to. And it was at a pretty, young age when I also had my sort of curiosity piqued by the likes of the lads Billy Joel and Elton John, and also the gal Carole King, because they were all sitting at pianos singing songs, and I was quite intrigued by that. So if you mesh up some mix of the old country and the singer-songwriter piano people and the classical, plus a lot of the folk lyricists I really liked, like, Gordon Lightfoot and Joni Mitchell, it kind of all that sums up and becomes my current day output, I think.
Now, your musical education, did you carry on through like the Royal Conservatory to grade 12 and that kind of stuff, or?
Yeah, so with Mrs. Young, I did several grades, and she handed me off to the teacher in the next town, Mrs. McTavish, and then she ultimately handed me off to a piano professor at the University of Regina while I was still in high school. So I did all the grades in Royal Conservatory, and then I did my, for those who know the conservatory curriculum, I did my associate diploma, and then I did a licentiate diploma as well by the time I finished grade 12. And then I kind of realized I had sort of maxed out on classical piano, if you will. It was fun, but I realized I didn't want to be, nor did I think I had the ability to be, a concert pianist. So I really thought at that point it was going to be a hobby at best.
And then, like I said, you're a singer, songwriter, pianist. So when did you start sort of working on your own blend of musical styles?
And that's kind of the funniest question for me anyway, because all my musical studies, my classical piano studies, were all by their nature me interpreting music that other people had written. Everything I was playing were notes that other people had written. And then I moved to Toronto for a job, and I discovered this singer-songwriter scene, and there were all these people who were, I'll say kind of mediocre musicians, but wonderful wordsmiths. And I'd never heard of any of them, but they were, some of them were eking out a living from it. Some of them were just doing it as a hobby. But the point is, they were doing it. And I saw this, and I thought, my mind was kind of blown, because I thought, oh wow, like growing up on a farm in Saskatchewan, it didn't dawn on me that Joe Blow could be a singer-songwriter. Like, you didn't have to be, the huge names you're hearing on the radio. You could just do this. And I took inspiration from these people I saw at these open mics and concerts, and tried my hand at it.
Do you recall the first couple of songs you ever wrote?
I sort of do. I'm remembering some of the melodies, and I can think of a few of the titles, but I specifically remember the first concert of my songs that I gave in a little venue in Toronto. It was called the Art Bar at the Gladstone Hotel, and the Gladstone Hotel now in Toronto is actually quite a fancy boutique hotel, but back in the day it was, let's just say, it was not very fancy. and they had this little venue called the Art Bar, and there was a black curtain on the back of the stage, and behind the black curtain was just a very thin wall, and behind the thin wall was the bathroom, and they hadn't insulated the wall, so every time the toilet flushed, you could hear it on the stage. And I'll never forget it. My very first concert, the microphone was gained up quite high, and it picked up the toilet flushing with the microphone.
Oh, no. So going to the Horseshoe Tavern would have been a step up from that then, right?
The Horseshoe was like, going to Windsor Castle to do a show, basically.
Right. So do you have a favorite type of music, or are you musically eclectic in your tastes?
Well, do you mean in terms of what I'm listening to?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say these days it has become sort of, I would say, the genre I'm listening to the most is Americana or roots music, and it and there's a whole bunch of artists within that scope, and it's kind of a broad title of a genre because it encompasses a lot of people. But what I love about Americana and roots folk music is the stories. They're not afraid to tell stories in their songs, very specific stories that are, in their specificity are able to communicate the universal. And I just love that. There's a real art to telling a specific story that allows, about a specific thing that allows some listener who's never experienced that to sort of, in their imagination, go to their own place. I love that about this kind of music.
Well, I like the stories, and I'll call it country music, but and I'm thinking of old, like A Long Black Veil. Lefty Frizzell had that out. He Stopped Loving Her Today, and the other one I was just thinking of, Carroll County Accident. I've always liked that one too, from Porter Wagoner. So yes,
Porter Wagoner.
The stories, yes, they all seem they've got good stories. Well, even Ode to Billy Joel by Bobby Gentry was a story song, basically. So, so people you're talking about include, like, in the area down at the Dead South and the Washboard Union, those kind of groups. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, yes, but I'm particularly drawn to the soloists in that genre versus the bands, probably mostly because I think for some reason I'm really drawn to the idea of a single voice. A single unharmonized voice telling a story. So people like a Canadian would be Donovan Woods. There's so many of them. A Saskatchewan guy who's become really famous is Culture Wall. There's so many of them. But for some reason I do find myself drawn to these soloists singing the songs, and I never get tired of Joni Mitchell. Like, I go back to her music all the time, and and Gordon Lightfoot as well. An American guy is one named Jason Isbell. They all have this focus on the words, and I think it's pretty wonderful.
A lot of Canadian artists, especially in the country, western roots, Americana genre, seem to pack up and move to Nashville. Have you ever thought of that?
No, I know it's there, and I've been there, and I have friends who have relocated to there, but I have no urge to go to live there. Rather, I love performing and touring in Canada. I love living in Canada, and I've been able to carve out a really good audience for what I do here. and I know, and I know Nashville's there, but it's such a short plane ride away that I kind of like it. I like the ability to go be there, but not to be there for a long time.
Gotcha. And a little bit back to the piano lessons part. Now, no one seems to take piano lessons anymore. Do you find that true or not?
You literally are now entering into a conversation I've been having with people over the last little while, in that you are absolutely right. There are so, like, I don't know what the percent is. I've been trying to Google this and do some research on this because someone must know a number. But the percent of young people taking music lessons now versus, say, 20 years ago, it's actually quite scary. Piano in particular is a very rarely studied instrument, shall I say? There's thank goodness some young people doing it, but compared to how it was, 20, 30 years ago, it's slim pickings. And of course, there's a lot of other options for young people to pursue. There's everything social media. There's all sorts of video games. There's all these things. To be completely honest, the conversations I've been having recently it's kind of a scary thought for where live music would be in, say, 20 years, given how few people are studying right now, or I wouldn't even say studying, but even like taking the time to learn an instrument. I think part of the problem is, just to dwell on this for a second, the other options that compete against it, social media, video games, etc. Young people get immediate satisfaction out of that. You get immediate recognition. You get an immediate quick win. You get people clicking like and giving you hearts and all these things. With learning an instrument, you don't get that. It takes hours and hours and years to get really good at it. And so that instantaneous reward that the online things are giving young people, I really think is a direct competitor to the time it takes to get good at an instrument.
Well, I think you're right because, these days if you have a piano or an organ to sell, well, you can't even give them away. Nobody wants them. So I don't know.
You are absolutely right. So many of these gorgeous old upright pianos are ending up in the dump.
Yep. Well, my wife plays the organ and piano, but mostly the organ. We had one she's had for 50 years. We couldn't sell it. We couldn't give it away. We had to literally tear it apart to take it out of the basement. And it's solid craftsmanship and very intricate, big speakers, big solid wood, and it's heavy as all get out. Nobody wants them anymore. It's a shame.
No. And the one I have in my living room in my house in Regina, it's 111 years old. It's a Heinzmann. It was built in Toronto. Came out here years and years and years ago on the train. I'm the second owner of this thing, and it's in great condition. And it weighs a ton. Moving it in here was nothing short of a miracle. But I love the instrument. But I also know that because I'm a piano player, every time someone has one to give away, they seem to find me on Facebook and see if I want a piano. By this point, I could have 200 pianos, but I've already got one. But I know when I tell these people that I don't want their piano, I know it's going to the dump. It's so sad.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Well, I don't know what we can do, but that's the way it is, I guess. Is there a musician that you would like to meet in person or play with that you haven't yet done so?
A musician? Oh my goodness, that's a good question. This might seem like odd, but I would really like to. I'm going to tell you two people. One is Dolly Parton. I would love to meet Dolly Parton, and I would love to sing a duet with Dolly Parton. For some reason, that is on my bucket list. I think she's I think she's probably the best performer, particularly in country music. I mean, she's more than a country musician. She's more than a country singer. She is a bona fide superstar entertainer, and she knows how to hold an audience in the palm of her hand. I would also love to meet Joni Mitchell. She's getting up there in years, and she's had some health issues. She's a little more frail, of course, than she used to be. Right. But I would love. She doesn't sing anymore, but I would love to just sit and talk with her. I think I find her fascinating. I've been able to go to a talk she once gave about 10 years ago in Toronto, and she blew my mind. I would love to have some one-on-one time to chat with her. Probably, she'd probably smoke a cigarette, and I'd probably eat a piece of Saskatchewan berry pie. We'd have a conversation.
You say you have a piano in your living room, and so what's your daily routine? Do you practice every day, that kind of stuff?
Well, not every day, but I do play quite often. In fact, just before our call, I was playing through a whole bunch of my songs and working on some solos for the songs. I find the problem with the music business, and I guess this is a good problem to have, is that it takes so much time to administer it. I mean, all the administration slash writing songs. I mean, it's all very wonderful, time consuming stuff. So when it comes time for the actual practicing, it's easy to always push that to the bottom of your to-do list. But over the last 6 months, and it was part of the pandemic got me to do this, I've been just sitting to play more, and it's still such a joy. I definitely know if I don't do it for a long time, I feel my fingers there's a little bit of rust forms between the joints there, So I got to make sure that I keep this thing in practice. But I do find after a day or two of getting back to it, it's all very fluid again. So I have this constant reminder to keep doing it.
Oh, good. So Jeffery Straker is big in Saskatchewan with Tell a Miracle. How did you get involved in that?
Tell a Miracle has become a cause very near and dear to my heart. This year, when I've hosted and performed on this 20-hour telethon for the last 11 years. 11 years ago, they reached out to me and asked me if I would come, and try out my first one and see how it went. And that's typically what they do with people who were new to the show. They give you a year to sort of see how it goes. And in that first year, I guess it worked for me and it worked for them because they haven't stopped inviting me back, which is really lovely. But I really sort of drank the proverbial Kool-Aid in the first year because I saw, as people in Saskatchewan would know who've ever watched this telethon, people from the province phone in donations to give to Tell a Miracle for the Kinsman Connect Foundation. Then it helps people get access to medical devices and medically related travel that they can't afford. And so I saw, for my first year, I saw these 50 phones on the stage, ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing, and it really sunk in that each one of those phones ringing was some generous person who was simply giving their money because they wanted to, and there was no other reason. No one was making them do it. They were choosing to give their money to help someone else, and I just got so moved by it. It's a really emotional thing. By the end of the 20 hours, seeing those millions of dollars come in, and it's all people who just donated because they wanted to. No one had to do it, and it helps countless people. So that first year, I really realized this, and I've been going back ever since.
Well, good, and I'm sure they're glad to have you because it might get tiring after a while. Say, oh no, I got to go do Tell a Miracle again. But when you really like it, it's impressive to say the least. You have your own songs out, you have lots of records, but apparently you won a big contest in Chile a while back, in Chile. Tell us a little bit about that.
I did win a big song competition in Chile, and that was in 2015 or 16. I've kind of lost track of it now, but it was one of those two. And the festival was called the Bina Del Mar Festival, and it's in this small city called Bina Del Mar, Chile, which is about an hour and a half from Santiago. And it's the longest running music festival in Latin America. It's the largest music festival in the Spanish-speaking world. And it's broadcast on TV across Chile on Chilevision, and then picked up via satellite and broadcast all over the Spanish-speaking world. And I didn't know how big its reach was when I went to do it. I sort of discovered all this en route, once I got there. But they found me online and found one of my songs that they wanted me to come and sing in this competition. It was an early song of mine, quite a poppy song called Hypnotized. And I went down there, and they, because it's Latin America, they do everything really big, and it's a big show, and it's
right.
Wonderful. So there were dancers, and there was an orchestra, and there were lights, and then what you have to picture though is that the audience is in this massive amphitheater, and it's an audience of 20,000 people. Like it's huge, and the roar of 20,000 people is something else if they like you. Now, what they didn't tell me is that if the audience doesn't like you because it's Latin America, they will gladly boo you. So, luckily,
Wow.
the latter did not happen. They liked my song, and you know, through the week of the festival, if the song competition part was judged, and if the judges liked you, you would progress through to the next day and the next day and the next day. So I made it to the finals, and it was quite nerve-wracking because by this point I'd come to understand that this was being broadcast on all over the Spanish-speaking world, and for the finals, which I sang in and then ultimately won, 150 million people around the Spanish-speaking world were watching. Thank God that dropped out of my mind the second the first note started with the band, and I just sang my song as if I was singing to 50 people in the living room. Right. But it was quite the experience, you know. It really, really, really was.
And going from that to house concerts, apparently you do house concerts, so that means you actually go to someone's house and play and sing for the invited guests. Is that how that works?
Yeah, so so on the total opposite end of the spectrum of what happened in Chile, by quite a contrast. In fact, my first show back in Canada after I won in Chile was a show that had been booked before I went there, and it was a house concert in Forest, Saskatchewan, and there were 30 people in this living room, and I sang for them, and I do about maybe 10 or 15 of these a year. I do about 120 shows each year, but so up 10% or so are house concerts, and it's literally me with the piano in someone's living room singing to anywhere from 30 to 50 people, and it's very intimate, and I can see everyone's faces, they can see me, no one talks, it's very quiet, there's always a break with really good snacks, and everyone pours a drink, and it's really social at the end, and I love doing them, and I've met so many people across the country from performing at these, and often you actually end up staying the night, with the host at the house. It's pretty cool.
Now you've got the piano in your living room, like you said, that's well over 100 years old. What do you do when you go on the road? Do you have to take one with you, or do you hope that the promoters or the house people have a decent instrument on hand?
Well, every now and then, if I'm really lucky, they'll have a grand piano, but that's not common at all. I typically take my a Yamaha digital piano, 88 weighted keys. It feels and sounds just like the real deal, though it is very much plastic. And I plug it into a small PA, and it works just wonderfully. And it fits in my Mazda with my speakers and my merch and my suitcase, and off I go. It's pretty fun, It's a real adventure because most of the time you don't know who the people are. You don't know any of the guests. You're rolling into this place. You know nothing about it other than that you're going to be singing for some people. It's not for the faint of heart. I don't think, but I really, really do love it.
And you've also had a number of albums, LPs, cassettes, whatever they're called these days, CDs out there. So how does one track down your music?
Well, I do have several albums out, and they're on CD, and some of them are on vinyl as well. If anybody's interested in checking out what they are or buying one, they can do that on my website, which is jeffstraker.com. Now, loads of people, the majority of people these days are streaming music, and so my music is also in digital streamable format on all the streaming sites like Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube and Amazon and all those places. So people can find it there too if they just search my name.
Gotcha. That's jeffstraker.com. JEFFSTRAKER. So back to the business side. What was the hardest lesson as a professional musician you had to learn that might have taken you by surprise or came out of left field?
Oh gosh, that's a tricky question. The hardest lesson. I think a lot of people would say this. Like in the music business, and I bet this is the same in most forms of art or entertainment. For every yes that you're going to receive, for every door opening, there's probably 9 no's or 9 doors closing on the way. So I think it's about a 1 to 10 ratio, and I'm not making that up. It's a business full of rejection, and the tricky part of it is you pour yourself into your songs. Your songs are essentially your feelings,
Mm-hmm.
And when someone, say a festival or a record label or whoever these people are you're sending your music out to, when they say no at first, it's quite a jolt, because what you feel initially is that they hate you. You're like, obviously that person hates me. What you realize over time is that it's very likely not that. It could simply be you might not fit what the festival or what the booker or what the publicist or what the record label is doing, but it might also be even be simpler in that you might just not fit right now. And sort of as a dotted line lesson to all this, a big learning has been, always be nice, because it's a really small business. The music business in Canada is a very small world, and everyone sort of knows everyone. So even though you might get sort of rejected here, you can't take that person and get angry, because you just have to be nice about it, because you're going to run into that person again in some other capacity, and so everyone's got to keep a bounce in their step and a smile on their face, and let the whole thing keep going. So I think the lesson is, like, don't take the rejection personally. That's easier said than done, and it just makes the whole thing easier.
And before we let you go, now that the pandemic apparently is over, you're gearing up your touring schedule, are you? You got some dates lined up?
I do. I have. It's quite fascinating to watch what's happening. During the pandemic, obviously everyone knows there was not an awful lot of indoor performances. I was able to do a few indoor performances just late last year as things were slowly creeping back towards normal. But by and large, the majority of shows I was able to do were last summer and the summer before, and I would do concerts in backyards. A, it was outdoors, so they were safer, and B, the capacities in backyards were within the under 50 people limit. I was able to keep busy enough doing that, but this summer it's so amazing to see the festivals and the venues, and even coming this spring into this fall and winter, and the theaters and the all the bookings coming in again. It's just, everyone had this small worry that maybe that sort of, demand for live music or that interest, we wondered, what if it waned a bit during the pandemic, but it just has not. The booking interest for a whole bunch of performances are coming up, and I've got probably 50 or 60 shows booked from now to the end of the year already. I haven't updated any on my website yet, but I will soon. If anybody is interested in knowing what they are, the tour calendar at jeffstraker.com will have them updated.
And that's jeffstraker.com. Write that down and follow him along. And Mr. Straker, thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love getting to chat about this stuff, and I love getting to talk to you.
Bags are packed, some regrets are gonna echo around inside my head, but it ain't gonna be a headline in yesterday's news. I can whisper, the head has to choose. I'm gonna make a change, gonna light a fire, sing it on out like a preacher to the choir. Gonna start with a spark, let the flames burn high. Oh, gonna light a fire.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.